Hello, internet. Well,
Hey,
hi, YouTube. This is the disembodied voice of Josiah.
and this is the disembodied voice of Craig,
I'm going to be talking about standard.
and I'm going to be talking about limited.
Here's all of the black cards in Zendikar Rising. Black has got some pretty interesting stuff going on. So, Craig, would you like to
I'm
start?
excited. Yeah, I'll start with Acquisitions Expert. For 1 and a black, you get a 1/2 human rogue at uncommon that says when Acquisition Expert enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals a number of cards from their hand equal to the number of creatures in your party. You choose one of those cards. That player discards that card.
I like this card, but I also don't like this card. I like the effect if you can hit it for 2 or 3, or a full party at 4. But hitting it for 1 is pretty. I mean, they discard exactly the card that they want to. So it obviously gets better the more people you have in your party. It's a rogue, so it does trigger other rogue effects. So that should definitely not go unnoticed. I'm gonna give this card a B, just because I think it might even see play in some weird control decks.
Cool. And in limited, this card's going to be okay. We had Kite Sail Freebooter in the previous set, which is a 2-mana 1/2 with flying that ripped any non-creature card from your opponent's hand. Most of the time, this is going to be a 2-mana 1/2 that gets rid of your opponent's worst card. But when you get it for 2 or 3, it gives you a little bit of selection, and you're probably going to be able to get something a little bit more juicy with it. It's fine. You're going to play it more often than you're going to cut it, and it's a rogue, so that's definitely saying something. I give it a C in limited.
Next, we have Blood Beckoning, which is 1 black sorcery spell at common with kicker 3. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. If this spell was kicked, instead return 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. I think it costs too much for the kicker effect. I know things are typically better when they're bundled, but in this particular case, I think I'd rather just have something that gets it from my graveyard to the battlefield. So with the current, for standard M21, 2021, what it is, I think this is a D, maybe even an F tier card.
In limited, this card's going to be okay. You might not always play it, but it's not going to be the worst. In the late game, it gives you some card advantage. You're going to get to basically pay 4 mana to draw your 2 best creature cards that you've already played this game. That's not too bad. It's not great either. There are other things Black can do that's far more powerful, but you're not disappointed at the first copy. It's either a low C or a high D. I think I'm willing to go down to D on this. You want to cut this more often than you want to play it, I think.
All right.
Next up, we have Blood Price. For 3 and a black, you get a sorcery at common that says, look at the top 4 cards of your library, put 2 of them into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library. In any order, you lose 2 life.
I think that this card is worse than it appears. I think in mono black it might have a place, but I think in any other color combination there are better cards to do this same effect or a similar effect. So I don't want to rate it too highly. The losing 2 life is nothing. 4 mana for this in black isn't horrible. And the fact that you get to pick 2 cards, put them in your hand, and the other cards go back into your library can be kind of worse in certain deck types. Like Golgari wants to put things in the graveyard, so not getting them in your graveyard is kind of a downside. But overall, I think this is a C tier card. It might see some fringe play, or it might even make it into some Dimir or Esper control decks.
Cool. And in limited, this is going to be a great card. You're going to definitely want to play 1 copy of it in a black deck, especially if you're not also playing blue. This is going to give you that card draw and card selection right at the end after you've dumped your whole hand. You're going to play the first copy of it, but anything beyond that, you're probably not going to play more than 1. But you're going to be pretty happy with it when you cast it. I give it a C.
We've got Blood Chief's Thirst next. 1 black. Uncommon sorcery spell with kicker 2 and a black. Destroy target creature or planeswalker with converted mana cost 2 or less. If this spell was kicked, instead destroy target creature or planeswalker. So you have to directly analyze this card with other removal spells already present in standard. And for 1 black, the first part of it is pretty good. Destroying a target creature or planeswalker with converted mana cost 2 or less. It gives you some early game pressure against those mono red decks. Anything with small guys early in the game, you hold a couple of these in your hand. Removing those threats early is going to save you some life. So that's pretty good. The second part is a 4 mana removal spell for creature or planeswalker. And the thing that sets it apart from spells like Murder is the or planeswalker, because I don't believe Murder actually hits planeswalkers, just creatures.
Right.
So you're paying 1 extra for the ability to just straight up kill a planeswalker, and that's actually not that bad. I think if you use it for a creature, you're paying a little bit extra for it, but I don't know that you really mind it too much. When I first looked at this card, I didn't think it was that good. I think I even told Craig that it was like it wouldn't see very much play, but upon reevaluating it and actually comparing it that way to, like, I don't know, something like I can't think of the name of any of the cards whenever I do these videos. Normally when I'm just talking, I have all the card names at my fingertips, but right now I can't. But yeah, so I think this is a solid B, maybe even an A tier card. I think you're going to include it a lot of the times over some other things, just because you can remove those early game threats and then still hold 1 back for late game. So yeah, I'm gonna say A. I'll give this an A.
In limited, this card is fantastic. It kills anything you want it to kill. That's exactly what you're looking for. It's premium removal in black, which, as we're going to see later, there's quite a few really good removal spells in black. You're first picking this in some weaker packs, and you're always playing it. You're going to play 7 copies of these. If you get 7 copies, maybe that's a little much, but you're going to be playing a lot of these cards. I mean, if you get 3 or 4, it's insane. As a B, easy B. Play it. Next up is Coveted Prize. For 4 to black, you get a sorcery at rare. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature in your party. It says search your library for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library.
Sorry.
If you have a full party, you may cast the spell with converted mana cost 4 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost.
So I told last review, I said that for me, party cards have a ceiling of B. And it, a lot of the times, if you have a full party, you may cast a spell with converted mana cost 4 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. That's it's going to be a 1 mana search your library for a card that is specifically you're able to cast with it and get to play it for 1. So that's pretty good. I think that this is one of the payoffs for having a full party. And I think that when people play the party deck, this is going to be a 4 of. So I'm going to say that this is a B tier. Maybe I'll give this an A minus, just because I think it's above the curve from all of the other cards. I think that as long as the party mechanic is in standard, this card is always going to be played. Just because that's the effect is insane for 1 mana.
I mean, if you can get it to cost 1, it's absolutely bonkers. But in limited, this is not something you really want to be playing. Tutor effects generally aren't very good. It's about the same as draw a card, because most of the time the cards in your deck are always at this like middle power level, unless you've got like a super bomb that you want to find. You probably shouldn't be playing this. Or if you really get there on party members, you probably want to play this. But most of the time, you don't. D for limited.
Really?
Yeah, it's just not. It's just too much mana. 5 mana draw a card is not what you want to be playing.
It's a little bit lower than I was expecting, but it tends to be.
It doesn't usually make the cut.
Next, we've got Deadly Alliance, 4 and a black, common instant. The spell costs 1 less for each creature in your party. Destroy target creature or planeswalker. Okay, so this goes hand in hand with Coveted Prize. You know, if you can get this to cost 1 mana, it's insane. Even if you get this to cost 2 or 3, it's still not bad, just because it's only got that single black cost. So this can be used in a lot of other decks than the mono black deck. I think that this is another one of the cards that you're gonna automatically include in any of your party decks that run black. So I'm gonna say this is a B tier card, because even if you're running a mono black deck, or you're running another deck that might have any one of those or 2 of those creature types in it, casting this for 2 or 3 is not bad, and you won't be upset about it. So yeah, a B tier card.
In limited, this is just more premium removal at common and instant speed. You get with the text destroy target creature or planeswalker. This thing would have to cost a lot of mana in order for it to suck. And 5, even if for 5 it doesn't put it out of the range in limited of being quite good. Just remove your opponent's biggest threat. Most of the time this is going to cost 4, and some of the time it's going to cost 3 or even less, and that's insane. Pick it, play it, love it, pick it early. B. Next up, Demon's Disciple. For 2 and a black, you get a 3/1 human cleric at uncommon that reads, when Demon's Disciple enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker.
This card's really good. This card is going to be in every cleric deck. This card is good if you play it on an empty board and you have to sacrifice Demon's Disciple to Demon's Disciple. It's still good. It's another removal spell at that point. You want to play it when you have a dork on the board, something that you don't really care, or something that you want to target with a sacrifice effect.
Yeah, maybe a token.
Yeah, this card is going to be, a scorpion, any number of things. And this card's going to be all over standard. It's going to be everywhere. It's going to be in decks it doesn't have any right to be in, just because of what it does. And the fact that it sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. There's not very many planeswalkers in standard after rotation, as is. And now there's so much planeswalker removal because of Ugin. This card's insane. This card it's an A tier card, if you ask me.
You got to be able to kill Ugin, man.
You have to be able to kill Ugin, and they're making it super easy to kill it.
Good. Similarly, in limited, it's insane. It's a sacrifice effect, so it doesn't get your opponent's best card all of the time, but it still gets a card. So 1-for-1, especially if you are playing a deck that has a bunch of crappy little guys. You're going to pick this and you're going to play it often. It's not quite a premium removal spell, but you're usually not cutting this card. You don't want to pick it quite as high as the other premium removal in the set, but you still want to pick it pretty highly. Easy C, almost a B, but not quite there.
Man, this card's in standard. This card is going to be the bane of everyone's existence. It's going to be everywhere, I'm telling you, man. My turn?
Yeah.
Drayna, the Last Blood Chief. For 3 and double black, you get a 4/4 legendary creature vampire cleric at Mythic Rare. It's got flying, and whenever Drayna, the Last Blood Chief attacks, defending player chooses a non-legendary creature card in your graveyard. Return that card to the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. The creature is a vampire in addition to its other types.
It's a lot of text, and it's good text. It is,
too. And okay, so this card has a pseudo downside. The pseudo downside being that the defending player gets to choose a non-legendary creature in your graveyard. But you can directly control what creatures are in your graveyard a lot of the time, and kind of force their hand to get back exactly what creature you want. And getting back your 1-drop still isn't a bad plan. Still isn't a bad thing. So she doesn't even have to get through, she just has to attack. So I don't know. There's so many implications. This card is going to be the centerpiece of a combo. I don't know what that combo is, but you're hearing it here first. This card is just, it's going to be the centerpiece of a combo in standard. I can't believe I'm going to give a black card another A, but I think that this card deserves an A. It's 5 mana 4/4 with flying, which isn't great, but it's also not horrible either. I think I would play a 5 mana 4/4 with flying most of the time in standard, and then this effect just puts it over the edge. So, yeah, A tier.
And then limited, a 5 mana 4/4 with flying is great. On top of that, you put all this freaking text. You're resurrecting your weakest card in your graveyard, but you're still resurrecting a card. It's amazing. It's incredible. This is a bomb. You first pick it every time. If you're not in black, sometimes you switch into black just to play this card. It's going to win any game. If you get to attack with this once, you're almost guaranteed to win. If you attack with it more than once, you're overflowing and wins. Just you got it. It's done. S tier. It's broken and limited. Just crush your opponents with Drayna. It's going to be great.
You know, in just a small side note, I'm thinking about like how I've been evaluating the party mechanic. If you're all the creatures in your deck that fit with the party mechanic are all legendary creatures that are this broken, it might actually work.
She's also a cleric.
Yeah, it might actually work. So she fits into the party deck, she fits into the cleric deck. I don't know. Maybe I just been looking at it under the wrong lens.
Maybe. Next up, Drayna's Silencer. For 5 and a black, you get a 3/2 vampire rogue at common that says, when Drayna's Silencer enters the battlefield, target creature an opponent controls gets -X/-X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures in your party.
It's too expensive. F.
In limited, it is very expensive, but it also adds to your board and usually takes away from your opponents. It's not going to be very hard to get -X/-X to be -2/-2. And then you're talking pretty good. It's no Blitz Leech or anything, but 6 mana for a 3/2 that gives -2/-2. Play that most of the time. And if you really get there on party members, if you can get this to kill 3 X3s or X4s, you're going to be absolutely crushing it. It's another removal spell, and it's another creature. It probably makes the cut more often than it doesn't. I give it a C. A little expensive, though. Watch your curve.
It's too expensive for that effect in standard.
Oh, yeah. That's terrible in standard.
It's redworm for 4 and a black. Got a
I'm excited for this one.
A 5/4 creature worm horror at common with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, redworm gains indestructible until the end of turn. It's a very interesting card. It's obviously very aggressively statted. 5 mana for a 5/4, but it also can become indestructible pretty easily on almost every turn you play it. The only issue is that it's until the end of turn, not until your next turn. So it can be removed on your opponent's turn because you can't really get a land onto the battlefield.
If you don't crack your Fabled Passage, you
That's
can
true.
get a land on your opponent's turn.
I guess you're right.
But I mean, that's a friend. That's not really a normal situation.
No,
so.
I mean, maybe you make a Dreadworm deck, and maybe that's the plan. Maybe you just always hold back that Fabled Passage to get it.
But probably not.
But then then you make it indestructible in response, and then they just remove it later because you can only do that 4 times. Which I don't know if a 5/4 is worth that, but anyway. So I don't know. I don't hate this card. I don't know what deck it goes into at all. So I'm gonna give it a D, just because I don't know what you would want to do with this card, and I don't really think that it's like an amazing build-around card at common anyway. So
no. In limited, this card's fine. A 5 mana 5/4 is pretty good. But if you manage to play lands after you've cast this thing, your opponent has a big, big problem. A 5/4 indestructible is horrifying to get attacked by. You're going to throw creatures under this thing, and it's just going to eat them up. If only there were a way to sneak lands onto the battlefield at instant speed, which I don't believe there's any here.
Nope.
This card would have been nuts. But as is, coming down on turn 5, and you, generally speaking, have already played most of your lands you're going to play for the game by that time. It's not going to get to attack with indestructible as often as you want it to. It's still going to be really good when you do get it to. I really love it. I want to say that it's a B, but I don't think that's realistically where it's going to end up. It's going to be a C. But watch out for this. It's gonna blow you out of games sometime.
It does have really cool art. Like, just look how big that freaking thing is.
It makes you think of Worm Coil Engine back in the day.
Oh, Worm Coil Engine, fucking broken card, man.
What a card!
It was insane.
We're not talking about Worm Coil Engine. We're talking about Expedition Skulker.
Expedition Skulker.
For 1 and a black, you get a 2/2 Vampire Rogue at common. Expedition Skulker has Death Touch as long as you control another rogue.
Okay, so this effect's gonna be pretty easy to get off. A 2-mana 2/2 with Death Touch is actually pretty good. The fact that it doesn't always have Death Touch, though, is kind of a problem. And I don't know, in the rogue deck, there's so many good rogues that you can play. I don't know that this one makes it into the deck all the time, if at all. So because of that, the rogue deck is really going to want to do other things like mill and ninjutsu things in and kill stuff and get stuff back. It's going to do other crazy things. So I don't think it has space for this card. So I think it's always getting cut. So I think it's a D tier card, unfortunately.
In limited, a 2-mana 2/2 with upside is fine. And that upside is Death Touch, which is really strong. You do have to have another rogue in play, so you might want to make sure you draft in those rogues, but you're probably going to draft rogues. And a 2-mana 2/2 is fine anyway. Sometimes you just need to play 2-drops. I think this makes the cut more often than it doesn't. C.
Feed the Swarm. For 1 and a black, you get a common sorcery. Destroy target creature or enchantment an opponent controls. You lose life equal to that permanent's converted mana cost. This is one of the things that they spoiled. They said black was getting enchantment removal, and here it is. I think that this card is going to see a lot of play. I think that you feel really bad when you use this card against an Elspeth Conquers Death or a Kiori Best the Sea God, but even in those cases, I think you gladly pay 5 or 7 life to not lose the game.
Yeah, usually.
So, especially if it's a Kiori Best the Sun God, you're definitely like, well, I either take 8 more light damage from this giant thing, or I give them one of my stuff for free. So I think this sees play all the time, forever, until this particular set rotates out. I'm really trying to find a bad thing about it. It's sorcery speed, so that's the worst thing about it, I think. So I'm gonna say this is another A tier card.
Yeah, and in limited, of course, this card's great. It's not a bomb. It's not winning you the game, but it's killing your opponent's bomb. It's more premium removal in black. That's 3. 3 at uncommon or common.
No, that's
what
more
are they
than
thinking?
3. That's more
what
than
are they
3D.
doing? What is it? One of them a rare though? I thought one of them was a rare.
Oh,
Maybe
yeah.
I don't know. It's insane. There's so much removal in black. It's nuts. I mean, you first pick this in some weaker packs. It's a B. Pick it, play it, win the game, whatever. It's so good.
It's so good.
Next up, Ghastly Gloom Hunter. For 1 and a black, you get a 1/1 zombie bat at common with kicker for 3 and a black. It has flying and lifelink, and if Ghastly Gloom Hunter was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it.
It's too expensive. Play something better. F tier.
Easy. In limited, a 2-mana 1/1 flying lifelink is pretty good. Not to mention all this equipment you've got going around. Just give this bad boy some hammers or something and let him go to town. It's really hard to race, and in the late game, you can get a 6-mana 3/3 flying lifelink, and that's still really good. You're probably not first picking it at all ever, but you're definitely playing it to see.
a zombie bat with a hammer.
Yeah, can you imagine that?
No, I can't. It'd be fucking horrifying. You've got Ghoul draws Mucklord. For 2 and a black, you get a 2/3 creature crocodile at common. When Ghoul draws Mucklord, dies, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. I don't think this card was made for standard at all.
No.
So this is an F tier card.
You're gonna get a lot of those.
But you know, maybe not an F tier. We'll give it a D tier just because that +1/+1 counter could be relevant in a very specific deck that you need it to be relevant on. I think there's a couple of cards that if a creature has +1/+1 counter on it, it gets trample or death touch or something, and that could be good. So yeah, D tier's fine.
In limited, this is a really good effect. The 3 mana 2/3 body is fine. And when it dies, you get to make one of your dudes like that ghastly gloom hunter zombie bat bigger. And black green is an archetype that cares about +1/+1 counters. It's going to be a fine card. You're going to pick it. You're going to enjoy playing it. It's probably going to make the cut every time. C. Next up, Hagra Constrictor. For 2 and a black, you get a 0/0 snake at common. It says Hagra Constrictor enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. And each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has menace.
Huh. Seems like it synergizes pretty well with Ghoul draws Mucklord.
Yes.
So
and the bat too.
So it's a 3-cost 2/2 with menace. So it gives other things menace. So it's above the power level for other
It's
cards.
A strong common.
It is a strong common. I don't know. I mean, you could make a menace, a +1/+1 counter menace deck in standard, and win the game with it. I mean, beat some people down, whatever. I don't think it's very good though. So I'll give it a D as well. I don't think that it deserves a C just because I don't think that it's actually going to see any play.
And in limited, a 3 mana 2/2 with menace would be pretty good by itself. The fact that it gives your team menace sometimes is really, really strong. The only downside to these +1/+1 counter synergy cards is that they're not any members of your party. It's a snake, it's a crocodile, it's a zombie bat. That's the only downside in limited. But I think the black-green +1/+1 counter deck is meant to be like the monsters your party is fighting, right? So, yeah, it's thematic. It's pretty good, and it's really good. It's gonna blow out games sometimes, but it's not a bomb, and it's not something you're gonna first pick a lot. Maybe in some really weak packs, but it's a C. It's good. You're not gonna cut it.
We've got. Sorry, I'm up next. My brain
yes,
was.
You are.
Highborn Vampire. It's a 3 and a black for a 4/3 creature vampire warrior at common. It's an F. Yeah, you should never play this card in standard. Even in a vampire deck, there's better vampires. In a warrior deck, there's better warriors. In a party deck, there's better party members.
Yeah, that's pretty easy. In limited, it's better than it appears. 4 mana for 4/3 is a pretty good rate. And it's a warrior, and that's going to matter sometimes. If you need 4 drops, you'll play it, but more often than not, it probably doesn't quite make the cut. Or if you really need like warriors, if you're in a bad need for that, you'll play it. But most of the time, you cut it. It's not an F because of the warrior tag, but it's a D. You're going to cut it a lot, but sometimes you need it. All right, next up, Inscription of Ruin. For 2 and a black, you get a rare sorcery with Kicker for 2 and black. Choose one. If this spell was kicked, choose any instead. And the selections are: target opponent discards 2 cards, return target creature card with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, and destroy target creature with converted mana cost 3 or less.
Okay, so
a lot of text on this one.
Yeah, and I'm going to evaluate it just like the other inscription. Because okay, so we'll 3 mana to do any one of those things. 3 mana to discard 2 cards. Fine.
Mind rot.
Yeah, mind rot. Exactly. Not bad. I would play that sometimes. 3 mana to return a 2-drop from your graveyard to the battlefield. That card already exists, except for it does a little bit more. Call to the Death Dweller, so that's also playable. And 3 mana to destroy a creature with converted mana cost 3 or less. Yeah, it's like a worse eliminate. Because eliminate hits planeswalkers as well. So, I'd say that that's playable. Now, to do all of them for 7 mana. Okay, yeah. For 7 mana, having your opponent discard 2 cards, getting a thing back from your graveyard, and killing something on the board all at the same time messes up their next couple of turns, potentially. Clears the board and gives you a body. I think this one does a better job than the blue one at doing more things. So I believe I gave the blue one. I think this is A. I think if you draw into this late game, you're pretty happy. I think if you have this in your opening hand, you're also pretty happy. I mean, even if you just have them discard cards early on turn 3, that's pretty fine. I think this is a solid A tier card. And just goes without saying that Black's power level is insane in this set. So
yeah, and in limited, you're pretty happy with all these modes too. Need something back? Do it. You got nothing else to do? Make your opponent discard 2 cards. Something needs dying? Kill it. Got a lot of mana? Do it all. If you ever get to do all 3 of these, you're gonna win the game.
Yep.
You're first picking this a lot of the time. However, it doesn't win the game on your own, so it can't get into bomb range, so I can't give it an A. But it's pretty darn, it's as close as a spell is going to get, I think. But B, pick it, play it, be happy.
I also said that I wish the blue one was 7 cost. This one is 7. So
yes,
it literally is just a better blue inscription, in my opinion.
Yeah, they do different stuff.
They do slightly different stuff, but anyway. Lithoform Blight. For 1 and a black, you get a uncommon enchantment aura, enchant land. When Lithoform Blight enters the battlefield, draw a card. Enchanted land loses all land types and abilities and has tap, add a colorless, and pay 1 life, add 1 mana of any color. This is an interesting card. It cantrips, which is really good. You can put this on an opponent's land. You know, and make them have to pay for whatever mana they need. You know, pay that life. Which could work. It's a very, very slow card. It cantrips, and that's really the only thing it does the turn it plays, because I don't think you want to play this on your land very often. Unless you're in a 5-color deck and you need one of the 5 colors you don't already have. So it's kind of hard to evaluate just because the standard is going to have so many land options, and it's going to be very easy to hit any of the 5 colors you need. I think this is a B tier card, a low B tier card, so B minus. I think it'll see some play, but I don't think it's gonna change the game.
I think it's standard if they print more lands that do more things. This will see more play later.
Just like because lands, of that,
more lands with activated abilities.
Enchanted land loses all land types and abilities. That's the relevant part of this card.
Like if they make lands that can animate themselves again, like this
which
card
they have one. They have one that does that. But
yeah, it gets plus one.
So I think that that's why I don't want to undercut it and make it like a C or a, you know what I mean? Is that what I said? It was a C minus,
something like that.
We'll say it's a C. I don't want to make it a D or an F just because it's going to see play. Just I don't know that it sees play right now.
Right. And in limited, this is mana fixing in black, which is very rare. So you're going to be pretty happy taking this. It turns your land into whatever land you need it to be at the cost of 1 life, and that's fine. It draws a card when it comes down, and you're totally going to be happy with that. It's a C. You're going to be real happy with it. Next up, Malachur Blood Priest. For 1 and a black, you get a 2/1 vampire cleric at common. When Malachur Blood Priest enters the battlefield, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of creatures in your party.
All right. This is actually, in my opinion, one of the better party cards. It's a cleric, 2-drop. It does a bad thing for your opponent and does a good thing for you. It trades up most of the time. I don't think that it is an auto-include in a cleric deck or even in the party deck, though. Just because, like I said, I think if you're playing party, you're going to be wanting playing big legendary creatures that just break the game when you play them. But it's not bad. I'll give it a solid C. Even if you play it for 2 and it's a 2/1 that deals 1 and you gain 1, that's not that bad.
Similar story in Limited, where you're a 2-mana 2/1 that drains your opponent for 1 is pretty good. If you can get it to do 2 or more, you're living large as far as 2-drops go. This fills your slot and makes you a happy camper. The fact that it has 1 toughness is a little rough, but you deal with it. It's probably fine. It's a C.
Marauding Blight Priest for 2.
Words are hard.
Yeah, man. For 2 and a black, you get a 3/2 common vampire cleric creature with whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. So the key part to remember is whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life.
Doesn't matter how much life you gain.
Exactly.
It's
you can gain 15 life, they still lose 1. Which isn't bad. At common, it's not bad at all. This is like your substitute for veto. Don't have veto in your hand, you got a Marauding Blight Priest, play the Marauding Blight Priest until you get veto. It's a slower game plan, but it still works. It's a cleric. I think this makes it into the cleric deck more times than it doesn't. And I think this is a solid C. Veto likes this card a lot. The life gain deck likes this card. There's so many things going for it. Even though it's a 3/2 at common, I like it. I think it's good.
Yep. In Limited, 3 mana for a 3/2. Pretty good rate, and it's got a sweet ability attached to it. It's a really good life gain payoff. If you manage to get yourself a couple of these, you're really going to be going hard for anything that gains you life. It's going to drain your opponent. If you even get to drain your opponent twice with this, you're doing pretty well. 3 mana 3/2s usually trade up. Nothing wrong with this card. It's an easy C. Next up, we have Mind Carver. For a single black mana, you get an equipment at uncommon. It says when Mind Carver enters the battlefield, attack into target creature you control. And there's a lot of these equipment automatically attached when they come down. I want to point out that makes most of them much better.
Much better.
Equipped creature gets +1/+0. It gets +3/+1 instead, as long as an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, and its equipped cost is 2 and a black.
So Craig and I have already stated in the blue review that we think that mill is going to be prevalent. That we think that getting 8 cards in their graveyard, your opponent's graveyard, is going to be pretty easy to do. Putting a 2 of Mind Carver into your Dimir Mill deck, pretty good. Mill, historically kind of falls flat some of the time because it doesn't have anything to do. You play these creatures that don't really do anything the turn they come out, and then you mill your opponent with these creatures or with these spells, and then they just kind of do nothing after that, or they block sometimes. This makes your crabs, it makes your crabs 4/4s for 1 mana. That's pretty good. So I like this card. I think it's one of the better equipments in the set. I give this a B. I think it's going to see more play than people are going to give it credit for. Hello?
There we go. We're back. if the recording heard everything I heard, that was wild.
Nope. I hope it didn't.
All right. Did you finish talking about it? Because I have no idea.
I did. Yeah, I did.
All right. Things that happen when you do stuff over the internet. Anyways, in limited, this card's great.
Let me. I said that we think that mill is going to be prevalent. That we think that this card.
I heard most of it. I just didn't get the end.
All right.
Yeah, in limited, this card's great, especially if you can get it to be +3/+1. It's gonna be really good. It turns all of your shitty dudes into crazy, insane fighty man. Getting 8 cards in their graveyard, not gonna be super tough in the mid to late game. Yeah, you're gonna be picking this pretty high. It's not usually not gonna be first pick though, but you're still gonna be taking it pretty early on. Easy C.
Also, that art is freaking amazing.
It is fucking awesome.
Look at just so good.
Yeah.
Then we've got Mind Drain. Let's say for 2 and a black, you get a common sorcery. Target opponent discards 2 cards, mills a card, and loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. Man, I said it before. I'm gonna say it the next color we review. The 3 mana sorcery slot in this set is insane. They're like, you need a utility card. Let's make it cost 3 and do a bunch of shit. And that's exactly what this card does. We just said that earlier that we would pay 3 mana for an opponent to discard 2 cards, but now they also mill a card and lose a life, and you gain a life. It's just, this is value town. This is so much value. I think this is going to see a lot of play. Just because of how much value is presented in this card. So I'm gonna give it, man, my knee-jerk reaction is to make it B. I'll give it a C+, because you top deck this late game, it's not gonna save your life. But it's not bad if you've got, if you got it in your hand. So
in limited, this puts 3 cards into your opponent's graveyard. That's a big deal in the blue-black deck, especially if you can get them to discard the 2 cards and mill a card, and then the life drain is relevant. But really putting 3 cards into the graveyard is really good. It gets you really close to that 8. If you're in a deck that cares about that, you're going to play this card. If you're not in a deck that cares about that, you're probably not going to play this card. Because in the late game, it just does absolutely nothing. So, that's always the downside in limited with these discard cards. They're powerful. It's like, oh man, you 2-for-1 your opponent, right? But most of the time you don't. You don't 2-for-1 your opponent. You play this card and it does fucking nothing. But in the right deck, it's quite good. In that deck where you need the cards in the graveyard, it's probably going to be a C. In every other deck, it's probably going to be a D. Tempted to go F, but the life drain kind of puts it up a little bit more. So
really, you were going to put this in F?
Yeah, I mean, just in limited, it's just you don't want to pay 3 mana to drain 1. That's pretty bad.
I mean, in the same thing, like if your opponent has a fully developed board and you get a mind drain off the top,
right? Like that's not what you're looking for.
You're not really
you
too
want
happy
something
about
to
it.
do. Yeah,
but at the same time, it's got its place in my opinion.
Yeah, like I said, in the right deck, it's a C. In the right deck, you play it.
Talk about this card.
I will talk about this card. I like this one. Nighthawk Scavenger. For 1 black, you get a 1+*3 vampire rogue at rare. Yeah, what does that even mean? We'll talk about it. With flying, death touch, and life. Nighthawk Scavenger's power is equal to 1 plus the number of card types among cards in your opponent's graveyard. All right, man, that's confusing.
So
simple nod to Vampire Nighthawk, by the way.
Oh, huge nod to Vampire Nighthawk. It's always a 1/3 with flying, death touch, lifelink.
It's already pretty good.
That's pretty good. Yeah. Then if you have milled your opponent at all, there's going to or killed anything. There's going to be at least one to 3 different card types in their graveyard. So a lot of the time, this is bigger than that. It's not a Vampire Nighthawk. It doesn't have first strike.
I don't think Nighthawk had first strike. It just had flying, death touch, lifelink, man.
Something had first. I think it had first strike, man. I really do. I can't because I don't have.
I got it. Not just flying Death Touch lifelink, man.
There was something that had Death Touch lifelink in first strike. I don't remember what it was.
I don't know. It wasn't Nighthawk, bruh.
It wasn't Nighthawk. But anyway.
Now you look bad on the internet.
Oh no, last time I said 3 wrong things. Oh god, internet, please don't. Please. They've made it 45 minutes in the video. Now they are questioning my decisions. Oh god. I think that you play this card in the rogue deck. I think you play this card in a mill deck. I think you play this card a lot of the time as just a good body to put out. This is something that needs to be removed almost immediately because
it's a must-answer threat most of the time.
As the game progresses, this thing gets scarier and scarier. So just because the more card types you're gonna put in there, so yeah, I think this is in standard. I think this is gonna see quite a bit of play, but I don't think that it's game breaking in any way. I think this is a solid B. Yeah, solid B.
In limited, I think this is a bomb. Even as a 1/3 flying Death Touch lifelink, it's still pretty good. But most of the time, it's going to be a 2/3 or even a 3/3. Even as early as turn 3, it could still be a 2/3 or a 3/3. I mean, you think about this: like your opponent plays a creature on turn 2, you trade with your creature, or maybe you've milled them with anything. It's pretty likely, especially if you've milled them, that there's going to be a land and a creature. And if you're just straight up playing the game, there's probably going to be a creature and an instant or a sorcery, or even creature, instant, and sorcery. I mean, it's not going to be hard to make this a 3/3 flying Death Touch lifelink, or it's not going to be hard to even have it happen naturally. It's not S tier, it's not broken, but it's really good, and it just has to be killed or you're going to win. It's an A.
Maybe the point of the deck that I made was giving it first strike. Maybe that's what I did. Anyway,
I don't know.
Continue on. Namana Skitter Sneak. For 3 and a black, you get a 3/4 human rogue creature at common with, as long as an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, Namana Skitter Sneak gets +1/+0 and has menace.
This is a freaking rogue riding a giant bug, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I see it. It's pretty great. So most of the time, like almost 100% of the time, you play this card. It's going to be a 4-mana 4/4 with menace. That's pretty good. I don't know that decks that care about graveyard are going to want to play mid-rangey dudes with menace. But this card is pretty strong just by itself in a vacuum. And people are probably going to try to make it work. I'm going to give this a C, just because it's also a rogue. It's not a horrible stat line, even for, even if it doesn't get the buff, which most of the time it's going to. So, yeah, solid C.
Yeah, and in limited, 4 mana for a 3/4 alone is okay, especially with a rogue tagline. It's gonna be useful there. Slapping on a +1/+0 and menace onto this bad boy, and you've got a real threat. Your opponent's gonna have to kill it, or they're gonna have to 2-for-1 themselves, blocking a lot of the time with it, and that's pretty good. Shouldn't be too tough to get 8 cards in the graveyard. That's gonna happen naturally throughout the game, even if you don't have any mill. In the mid game, a 4 mana 3/4 is fine, and in the late game, a 4 mana 4/4 with menace is pretty good. See, you're not going to cut it, probably.
In my drafts, I drafted a lot of this card actually in the blue-black mill deck.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty good. Next up, we have Namana Skydancer. For 2 and a black, you get a 2/1 human rogue at common with flash and flying. And when Namana Skydancer enters the battlefield, target opponent mills 2 cards.
It's got flash, it's got flying, and it's a rogue that mills. It's gonna see play. It's a common card that's almost guaranteed to make it into the rogue deck, because the rogue deck already wants to mill things. It already likes flash creatures because it has a lot of support for flash creatures. So a lot of time this is going to be a 2 mana 2/1, not a 3 mana 2/1. which is just great. So I think this card is for a common, it's a B tier card. You know, I think it makes it into a lot more decks than people think it's going to make it into. Because it has the word flash on the card.
Yeah, and in limited, this is pretty good too. 3 mana for a 2/1 isn't very good. Even with flying, it's still okay. But you add flash, and now all of a sudden we can put it in our opponent's instep and start going to town in the air with little to no reaction. And you also mill them for 2 cards, which the blue-black deck is really going to care about. You add the rogue tagline, and now all of a sudden it fills a role in your party and turns on other rogues. This is an instant speed way to turn on your other rogues, by the way, like the 2 mana 2/2 with Death Touch. You attack with it, they block with their 3/3 or 4/4. You flash this guy in. Now all of a sudden your 2/2 has Death Touch, and you've traded up, and that's really, really good. Or maybe you're blocking with it, and then you flash this thing. I mean, there's other implications than just a 3 mana 2/1 flash flying. And I think for that reason, it makes the cut a lot of the time, especially if you get there on mill or if you need rogue synergies. Yeah, it's a solid playable. See.
We've got No Priest of Oblivion for 1 and a black. You get a 2/1 vampire cleric at rare with kicker, 3 and a black. It's also got menace and lifelink. And when No Priest of Oblivion enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield.
Wow, this card's really cool.
It is really cool for that effect, and for literally everything about this card. It's worth it. For 6 mana, you get something from your graveyard to the battlefield. This thing has menace and lifelink. So a lot of the time it's going to go unblocked for a couple of turns. And if it doesn't go unblocked, I mean, if it does get blocked, then you're gumming up the combat phase with a 2/1. So that feels pretty bad for your opponent. I think this card is going to be played quite often. It's going to make it into the cleric deck basically every time, I think. They kill your veto. Well, good thing I got a No Priest of Oblivion. I don't have a short, clever name for it, but yeah, I think this thing is awesome. I think it's an A tier card.
And in limited, it's also very good. A 2 mana 2/1 with menace and lifelink is already really strong. It's going to go unblocked a lot. It's going to gain you that life. The swing turns it has is really strong. And you add this kicker effect to resurrect your best card, and all of a sudden you've got a recipe for deliciousness. In the early game, it's good if you draw it early. In the late game, it's good if you draw it. It doesn't quite win the game on its own, because if you haven't had anything cool die, you're just bringing back like a 3/3 or a 4/4, which is still really good, but that's not game breaking. And a 2 mana 2/1 with menace and lifelink by itself doesn't win you the game either. But it's still going to be quite powerful, and you're going to first pick this almost every time. It's almost a bomb, but it's not quite there. High B, take it.
I think I'm drafting that every time I see it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You've got Oblivion's Hunger. For 1 and a black, you get an common instant that says target creature you control gains indestructible until end of turn. Draw a card if that creature has a +1/+1 counter on it.
It's F tier. I don't think it makes it.
In constructed, it's not quite strong enough, I don't think.
I mean, mono black, being able to deny one of the many removal spells that they have was pretty good. But if you're literally in any other color along with black, you can do this better. So
yeah. In limited, this card's fine. Giving something indestructible until end of turn is usually not something you want to play. You open yourself up to 2-for-1s because you try and give something indestructible, and then your opponent responds with an instant speed removal spell, and they kill your creature, and your spell has done nothing. draw a card if the creature has a +1/+1 counter on it. I mean, I guess if you really get there on +1/+1 counters, you might play this, but you don't want to. Because of that clause, it's not completely unplayable. And turning off your opponent's removal spells can be quite good. When it works, it's going to feel good. But more often than not, it's going to feel bad. D.
Scion of the Swarm. For 3 and double black, you get a 3/3 uncommon vampire cleric with flying, and whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on Scion of the Swarm. Man, this card.
How many more Johnny's Pride Maids can they print?
I know, this time in black, so they're like, Orzahav life gain was kind of a thing before. Now it's the only thing. It's a vampire cleric.
It costs a lot of mana.
It does cost a lot of mana, but by the time you play this, you've already gained some life. You're going to be gaining more life. And it fits in the cleric deck because it's just a bomb in the cleric deck. It's better than Bloodthirsty Aerialist most of the time. Because it's a 3/3. Man, it's actually tougher to evaluate this than I thought it would be. I think this is a C+.
Yeah. And in limited, this is also a very good card. 5 mana for a 3/3 flyer is a little understated. You usually want it to be a 4/4, but the ability on this bad boy makes it really worthwhile. And the fact that it's a cleric. Look, I'm going to stop saying the fact that it's a cleric, rogue, wizard, warrior makes it better. If it is a member of the party, it's obviously better in decks that care about it. I'm going to stop saying it for every single one. But yeah, if your opponent doesn't answer it and you've got some life gain synergy, it's going to take control of the game. It's almost a bomb. In that deck, it is a bomb. In a deck that has a lot of life gain, this is a bomb. And you're going to win with it. However, because it's not always a bomb and does take some build around, I can't give it that A rating. It's still something you're going to first pick a lot of the times if you're already in black. So it's still a B, but it's almost. And in some decks, it is an A, but it's a B overall, but very good still. Next up, we have Scourge of the Skyclaves. For 1 and a black, you get a star demon at Mythic Rare with kicker for 4 and a black. And when you cast the spell, if it was kicked, each player loses half their life rounded up. Scourge of the Skyclaves, power and toughness are each equal to 20 minus the highest life total among players.
People are going to make decks surrounding this card. People are going to win games because of this card. This card has a huge upside. It's a little bit tough to set up in a way that benefits you. But I think that this card is... I'm going to say this card is A tier. Because even if you play it and... I mean, I don't know. If you play it, it instantly dies. It's not horrible. Because you dealt so much damage to both, what you're dealing 10. You're dealing 6 to 10 damage most of the time, right?
Yeah, to each of you, yeah.
To both of you. Playing it for 2 isn't horrible once you've already done that once or late game, and both of you have low-ish health totals. But against a life gain deck, then
it's trash.
It's garbage. Against a life gain deck, this card is unplayable. As a 2-drop. But in the right circumstances, this card just gets crazy. So I guess it's a B tier card. I want it to be higher than that just because I think this card's really cool, but yeah, it's B.
In limited, this card's really interesting. It's a 2-drop that you can't play on turn 2 most of the time because someone probably still has 20 life. Hopefully you. But as the game progresses in the mid game,
Craig? Hello?
Can you still hear me?
Now I can. You went silent for a little bit there.
And you did the same thing to me earlier, so sorry about that. Internet, things over the internet, you know how it is. You're on the internet right now. But anyways, it's a 2-drop that you can't play on turn 2 at all. But if you manage to, like, both of you have taken a few hits, you've been trading blows, you get a 2 mana 4/4, 2 mana 5/5, 2 mana 6/6, etc. You're really winning. This thing has the potential to be huge. In fact, most of the time it will be. It doesn't. If you can kick it, that's great, but you lose life too. So it really just keeps you even and gives you a really big boy. If this thing had trample or flying, or if you can give it something like that, you're really going to be winning the game. But I think because it doesn't have any of those crazy keywords or anything, it's not a super huge bomb. It's just like a generic 6/6, but it's still a 2 mana 6/6. You're going to pick it. You're going to first pick this all the time. It's a B.
Yeah, giving it +1/+1 counters and making it have menace is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, in that situation, great. You have a bomb, but on its own, it's still really good, but it's not a bomb.
All right, you've got Shadow Stinger for 2 and a black. You get a 1/4 uncommon vampire rogue with tap another untapped rogue you control. Shadow Stinger gains death touch until the end of turn. Whenever Shadow Stinger deals combat damage to a player, that player mills 3 cards. So, this card is going to be played quite a bit. Fits into quite a few different archetypes just by itself. I think that it's got a good stat line for what it does. It's not poor stat distribution on it. I think that it's good that it's an uncommon. I think this is a B tier card. It does require really to work the way it's supposed to. It does kind of require you to have another rogue on the field, but it's not horrible. So yeah, B.
In limited, I've heard a lot of talk around the internet that they don't think this card's that great. And don't get me wrong, it's no bomb. It's not, something you're first picking. But I think this card is pretty good. You attack with it, and then if you have another rogue that you don't want to attack with on the field, which will happen some of the time, your opponent has to make a choice. Do they trade a card for it, or do they take the hit and mill 3? And a lot of the time, they're going to take the hit and mill 3, which a lot of your deck is really going to care about. It's really bad if your opponent has like a 4/4 or a 4/2 or something, and you don't have another rogue. But a 3 mana 1/4 still gums up the ground pretty good in a defensive deck too. So I think you're going to be playing this more often than you're going to cut it. And I've heard people say that it's just not going to make the cut. I disagree. I think it makes the cut a lot of the time. I think it's a C. Next up, Shadow's Verdict. For 3 black, you get a rare sorcery that reads, exile all creatures and planeswalkers with converted mana cost 3 or less from the battlefield, and all creature and planeswalker cards with converted mana 3 or less from all graveyards.
I love this card. I love this card so much. It's expensive. It's a big, expensive sorcery spell, and it does big, expensive sorcery spell stuff. It kills Uro. It destroys graveyards and it wins you games against red deck wins. And a lot of times against a lot of other decks. I think this card is great. I think it's going to see a lot. I think black is insane this set, and I think that this card is proof that black is insane. They want it to be a powerhouse color. And I think the best decks in standard are going to include this color in them. I give this an A tier. It would be an S tier if it was a little bit cheaper, but for 5 mana and double black, it makes it an A tier.
Yeah, and in limited, this card's actually not that good. Usually by this time in the game, when you get 5 mana and a double black especially, you're not going to care about things that cost 3 or less a lot of the times, unless you really, really do and you're getting crushed. You know, I mean, it's still good. Don't get me wrong, but it's not insane. A lot of times you're going to trade off your little things with their little things, and then you're going to get into this like mid-rangey battle of things that cost 3 or 4, or and a lot of times this is going to kill your stuff too. And sometimes you care about the graveyard, and sometimes you don't. I mean, you're not usually gonna. I don't even think you're first picking this in limited most of the time, man. And maybe I'm completely wrong, and maybe this is busted. It is a board clear sometimes. But if it's just it, I don't know. It's gonna kill your stuff a lot too. I just don't like it as much as I think other people do in limited, especially. It's a C. You're gonna play it, but you're not gonna like be yanking this out of your pack one, pick one, or anything. I don't think.
This one card shuts down Luris decks. Any Luris deck.
Oh yeah.
Literally.
It's got way better implications in constructed.
Oh man, it is just. It's so juicy, and it's
still good in limited.
It's got cool art. It's only a rare. Like, there's just so much. The shadows of death fall over everyone in the end. Like, that's even cool flavor text. Just saying, I love that card. It's my turn, right?
Yes.
Skyclave Shade. For 1 and a black, you get a 3/1 creature shade at rare with kicker 2 and a black. Skyclave Shade can't block. If Skyclave Shade was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 2+1/+1 counters on it. Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if Skyclave Shade is in your graveyard and it's your turn, you may cast it from your graveyard this turn. So this, I don't know that we've seen a card with kicker and landfall on it besides this one.
No, I don't think so.
It is certainly an aggressively statted card. 2 mana for a 3/1.
It reminds me a lot of Bloodghast.
It's not bad. The fact that you can, play it from your graveyard, it's pretty great. The fact that it can be bigger late game, and it's reasonably priced bigger too, just because you can recur it. So I understand the tax on this one. For 2 black, it's for 5 mana, you get a 5/3. That's all right. Like, that's not bad.
Especially because you can just keep getting it.
You can just keep getting it. It doesn't have like the escape, so it doesn't hurt your graveyard in any way, shape, or form. I mean, I think this is gonna make it into some aggressive decks for sure. I think Rakdos aggro is gonna love this card. I think the mono black aggro is gonna love this card. I think that. Yeah, so this is man, I dare give another card a rating of A? Do I dare give another black card A?
Go for the gusto, man.
It's not an S tier card though. That's the thing. It's an A card. A tier.
In limited, this card's great. A 2 mana 3/1 that can't block, whatever. You're not blocking with a 3/1 anyway. You're playing this thing to hit your opponents and hit them hard. The fact that you can make it a 5/3 in the late game, that's no joke, man. 5 mana, 5 power, bring it down, bring on the pain. And it just continuously comes back. You can set this up to where you can play lands for a while. I mean, after turn 5, it happens a lot less. But still, I mean, on turn 4 or something, you play your land, you resurrect this for 2, and then you also play another 2-drop. That's amazing. Whatever, get out of here. This thing's going to win you the game a lot. You're just going to keep attacking with it, and your opponent's going to keep being sad.
Getting flooded has never been so fun.
Right, like, who cares? I'm getting flooded out, whatever. I've got 8 lands, slap a 9th one down, spin 5 of it, bring this guy back. Let's go. Is it a bomb? Maybe. Sure, you know what? I think this card alone is going to win you some games. This is an A.
I like it.
Unless you're really far behind and you're getting crushed, like then this card doesn't do anything because it can't block. But attack them.
It's a good card.
Next up, we have Skyclave Shadowcat. For 3 and a black, you get a 3/3 cat horror at uncommon. With 1 and a black and sacrifice another creature. Put a +1/+1 counter on Skyclave Shadowcat. Whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it dies, draw a card.
It's a cat. and I know that we haven't talked about that tribe in a minute, but it's a cat, so that should be stated. So that makes it slightly better, because the cat cards are pretty good cards. They're better than the dog cards, in my opinion, in Standard, but they do different things. I don't know. I don't think that this card fits into any deck anyway, outside of a cat deck that wants to run this for some reason. So I think this is actually a D tier card. I wish that it was a little bit higher because I think it's a cool card. But yeah, it's D tier for sure.
In limited, this has a lot of sweet text, and 4 mana for a 3/3 is a reasonable rate. That's pretty run of the mill. The fact that you can throw away some creatures you have just sitting around doing nothing to make this bigger is great. Maybe your opponent's enchanted it with like the blue bubble card, and you can't do anything with it. Screw it. Make your guy 4/4, 5/5, 6/6, whatever. And in a green-black +1/+1 counters deck, you're just going to be throwing away bad cards that can't do anything, getting cards for it, and growing your guy. It's awesome. You're probably not first picking this unless there's nothing else, and you're already in black, but it's still going to be really good. You're never cutting it. So see.
Moving on. Soul Shatter. For 2 and a black, you get a rare instant that says each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker with the highest converted mana cost among the creatures and planeswalkers they control. In a set, in a color that has so much removal, let's give it another removal spell.
Yeah, right?
Not only give it another removal spell, but give it a really good one. So this forces them to sacrifice Ugin if they have it on the board, unless they have another 8-drop.
Pretty unlikely.
Pretty unlikely. So this is, I mean, it is good. It is really, really good because of the power level of the sets before it. This set needed to have answers.
Needed to be good.
It had to have answers. And that's what this set brought. And I'm really glad that Wizards has been doing it for as long as they have because they're smart about the things that they do. They don't make rookie mistakes like other card games do. They understand the game that they're making. And this card is kind of proof of that, in my opinion. This is... this is an S tier card, man. If you're playing black and you own this card is going in your deck. At instant speed too, like it's just there's no.
And in limited, this is really good. Oftentimes, making an opponent sacrifice something doesn't come up to be as good as just straight destroying it, because they get to pick and you kill their worst thing. But a lot of the time, the highest mana cost thing is probably their best thing, especially in limited, where generally speaking, the more mana you pay for something, the better it gets. The more power and toughness it has. Yeah, you're going to be really happy with this. I mean, you're going to be pick wanting it a lot. It's no bomb rare, obviously. I mean, it doesn't win you the game on its own, but it's premium and good removal. It's a B, easy.
I think this is the only card I've given S, actually.
But, yeah, the only one I've given S is Drayna.
But it's just, man, it is just.
Yeah, it's really, really good, man.
it just does everything that it should. I would expect this card to be a sorcery. I would 100% expect it to be a sorcery.
But here we are.
With it being an instant.
Next up, Subtle Strike. For 1 and a black, you get an instant at common that says choose one or both. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn, and put a +1/+1 counter on target creature.
So there's one word on this card that makes this card good. And it's the word both. I think that you always play this for that both. Unless you are in a pinch and you are
is pretty good.
Yeah. If you're dying to a 1/1 and you need to cast this on your board being empty and you need to kill that 1/1, sure, play for 2. But outside of that, you're always playing it for the both. And I think that makes the card pretty good. I don't think that this card is going to see a shit ton of play in Standard. But I think that there are going to be some decks that play it. And you know, so I'll give this card a D. I wish that it was higher. Like I wish that the card was more powerful in some way, shape, or form, but it's not, so it's fine. But yeah, we'll give it a D.
In limited, this card's actually fine. There are a decent number of X1s running around in the set that sometimes this is going to get you a 2-for-1. It's going to kill their X1 and it's going to buff your creature big enough to win combat. And then it's going to be really good. And sometimes you just play it as a regular old combat trick that nerfs your opponent's creature, buffs your own, and then just lets you win combat. The fact that the buff sticks around afterwards is really good, especially in the black-green +1/+1 counters matter deck. At first glance, I didn't like this card too much, but I've thought about it a little bit, and it seems pretty solid. Usually, combat tricks have this big deal where sometimes you get 2-for-1, but the upside on this one, sometimes also just being a removal spell, is really good. And I think you're going to play this card a lot. You might even play a couple copies of it if you get your hands on them. I think it's a C.
I like it, man. I do like it in limited a lot.
I was low on this when I first read it.
Me too. And I know I only rated it a D, but this because it's standard. Exactly. As a card, like not talking about format, I think it's a good card. My turn, right? Or did it? Yeah. I can't hear you anymore. Gonna wait for Craig to come back.
There's just better stuff in standard, but it's still fine.
My turn, right? Or did
yes.
I? Yes. Okay. We got Tiberax, Hope's Demise. For 2 and a black, you get a 2/2 legendary creature, Demon Cleric. Flying, Tiberax, Hope's Demise has lifelink as long as it has 5 or more +1/+1 counters on it. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Tiberax. If that creature was a cleric, you may draw a card. If you do, lose 1 life. It's like they want the cleric deck to be a thing. As if it didn't already have enough reason to do it with all of the good cards being clerics in black. They're like, here's one more to just put it over the edge. To force your hand into creating this deck. I think he's great. I wish that he had 1 more toughness, but for balancing purposes, I completely understand why he doesn't. I'm trying to find a downside to him.
He gets shocked.
He does get shocked as soon as he comes out, and that does stink. But I think that if you're a smart player, you don't play him on turn 3 when your opponent has any mana up at all, or any hand for that matter. You kind of wait. So yeah, I think this is an A tier card. I think this card is going to make cleric decks as well. It's going to be an auto include in them if you have it. It's a good card.
Yeah, and in limited, this card's a pretty strong creature. 3 mana for a 2/2 flyer is already going to make the cut a lot of the time, and then you just give it 2 full blocks of text of upside, and whenever something else dies, it gets bigger. If it was a cleric, you also get to draw cards, which you're going to have more clerics in your deck. You're playing black. Black has a lot of clerics. And also, if you have 5 or more +1/+1 counters on it, it has lifelink. Is that going to happen a lot? Probably not. But hey, it's still upside. I'm tempted to give this card a bomb rating, because if it goes unanswered, it will win you the game. But by itself on an empty board, it's just a 3 mana 2/2 flyer. So I don't think I can do that. You're still first picking it a lot of the time. It's going to win you games sometimes. It's a B, but it's almost an A. And sometimes it'll function like an A, but it is still just a B.
I mean, in the +1/+1 counters deck, you now have a reason to put +1/+1 counters on other stuff. You know, it's
probably not going to get 5.
It's going to be really hard for it to get 5.
Yeah, but the other stuff it's doing is already good enough.
There's going to be a Tiberax sacrifice deck that makes this thing just go insane.
That'll be fun to see. Next up, we have Thwart the Grave. For 4 black, you get a sorcery at uncommon. And this spell costs 1 less to cast for each card each creature in your party. You can return target creature card and up to one target cleric, rogue, warrior, or wizard creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield.
This is just a better version of the card earlier in every way. 2 mana for this ability is insane. 3 mana for this ability is insane. 4 mana for this ability is insane. 5 and 6, it's still playable. And this is one of the only party cards where I'm like, yeah, you should play this in non-party decks. You can play this anytime. You can play this 6 mana in standard to get 2 things out of the graveyard.
Yeah, 6 mana res 2 guys is still pretty solid.
That's actually, you know, a fair bundle. And then just discounting it for literally any creature you have on the field, because you're gonna do that when you make your deck. There's gonna be a cleric, a rogue, a wizard, or a warrior on the field when you play this. It's just yeah, this is the only, I don't know. I think maybe I'm just really in love with this color, but I think I'm giving it an A. I don't know how many A's I've given out. Somebody comment, get in the comments and be like, Josiah, you literally gave almost every card in this set an A. But just do it. Just tell me how many I've done.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. In constructed, it is good. I don't play a lot of it, but it looks great. And in limited, this card's fucking awesome. You cast this for 6 and you're super happy. You cast this for 5, you're super happy. You cast this for any less than that, and it's Christmas. Having party cards isn't going to be hard, and having them be dead is pretty likely. So yeah, bring 2 guys back. Bring back a snake and a rogue. Bring back two clerics. Who cares? Whatever you do, bring 2 things back. Put them on the battlefield.
Bring back your Torbrax.
Yeah, whatever. You're super duper happy, man. This card's great. First pick it a lot. B.
I just can't.
Yeah, it's good, man. It's really good.
Finally, we have Vanquish the Weak. For 2 and a black, you have a common instant. Destroy target creature with power 3 or less.
More removal.
This is... It is less good in standard because there's Eliminate exists, because Heartless Act exists, because literally any of the other removal spells in this set exist. So this is a C tier card. I think it's going to go in a value deck if you don't have any of the other options. This is a solid one.
Good budget
common
option.
Exactly. At common, this is a solid option. Nobody's going to be mad at you for running it. You draw it late game up against an Elder Gargroth, you're really, really sad. But you know, in almost every other situation, it's good. So I give it a C.
In limited, this card's really good, man. It's not quite premium removal. It doesn't kill anything, but it kills most things you need to kill. Most things in the set have 3 or less tough power, and you're gonna be taking out something probably pretty important. There's a lot of like 3/4s and 2 and 1/4s and stuff, and you're gonna clear the way a lot. I don't know if you're first picking it. You're probably still picking it pretty highly. It's close to a B, but it's not quite premium removal, so I can't really give it a B. But you're not cutting this from your deck unless you're overflowing on removal, which if you're playing black, it might be. There's a lot of removal. It's a C, though. It's really good. C.
If you're drafting black, you're basically guaranteed removal spells. But let's look here real quick. We've got just hard removal, no -1/-1, none of that stuff. So we got 1, 2, 3. Where's another one?
I know there's 4, but I'm just
4.
Waiting to see it.
Yeah, I found it. 4, 5.
Yeah, if you're counting sacrifice spells. Yeah,
5, 6, 7. 7 removal spells in this.
And a lot of them are common and uncommon.
And a lot of them are common.
That's a big deal.
I don't know. I think this is the strongest color.
I'm excited to draft black.
I'm excited to.
Grindy black attrition decks are gonna be good.
I mean, yeah, dude. There's a lot of options here. There's a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you for watching.
Yeah, appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe. If you're coming here
let
from
us know
Reddit,
what we got right.
yeah, please let us know what we got wrong. Tell us what you agree with or don't agree with. If you're coming from Reddit, if I decide to post this on there, even though it hasn't really been welcomed with open arms, thank you for making it to the end. We appreciate you. Let us know what you thought. Yeah, until next time, thank you for dealing with technical difficulties.
Jesus Christ, yeah. Thinking things over the internet. Thanks and bye.
Bye.